Hi everyone. So for my genetic disorder for discussion today, I chose Williams-Beuren syndrome. I chose to formulate my genetics project experience around this disorder because my cousin has it. My cousin just turned 18 years old, and I've been in her presence for let's see, she turned 18 and I'm 24. So I would say, yeah, in my time, I definitely spent a lot of time with her. So, I love her. She's my cousin. And in those experiences, I actually did a lot of volunteer work for the Williams Syndrome Association. I helped organize a lot of their fundraising events, really had to learn about the condition itself. And I've really interacted with a lot of individuals who do have Williams syndrome. I can attest to the fact that they are some of the sweetest, kindest, most wholesome people ever. A lot of the ones I met are from pediatric age to younger adults, but I have met a few more grown people, and they just have some personality in the best way possible. So, being that it is more of a rare condition, I wanted to kind of shed some light on a interesting, relevant, and what I find to be meaningful topic for other students to learn about as well. So let's get started. So what is Williams-Beuren syndrome? Throughout the video, you'll hear me calling it Williams syndrome. Not entirely sure why, but it is more commonly referred to as Williams syndrome. Based on its statistics, it is considered a rare genetic disorder, and there's less than 200,000 cases per year diagnosed. One of the main concerns with Williams syndrome is the fact that it can develop and lead to further systemic complications, which I will talk about momentarily. And patients present very distinct features, which I will show you momentarily. So the distinct features of Williams syndrome, as you can see here, that is me, along with my 18-year-old younger cousin. So you'll actually be able to notice some features of hers that tie into the features noted. So one of them is a low bridge of the nose right here, a very wide and full mouth, very large lips, small, widely spaced and or missing teeth. And one of the really interesting characteristics that has so much beauty to it is typically all the young individuals that I've met have lighter colored eyes. And what happens is like this starburst white pattern forms in the colored section in the iris, and it almost makes their eyes look glass-like. So I didn't know that this was a featured characteristic of Williams syndrome, but it is. Some systemic features include arterial stenosis, hypertension, metabolic disorders, and difficulty gaining weight. There are blood vessel structural hindrances, so a lot of times they will find that their aorta is narrowed, many arteries are narrowed, and this ultimately affects how the muscle of the heart will work. That's one of the reasons why high blood pressure is a common feature of Williams syndrome. So the most crucial element to watch in these young patients isn't so much the neurological component of it, it's more of the cardiovascular component. And with that being said, metabolic disorders and difficulty gaining weight are another two, which demonstrates there's an effect on the gastrointestinal system as well, which is another thing that needs to be further looked into. And that's where a lot of the complications stem from, not so much the neurological aspect. So the molecular cause of Williams syndrome is a deletion of 26 to 28 genes on chromosome number 7. These genes are in the gene region of 7q11.2, and the gene attributed most frequently is the GTF21 gene. Now, what's interesting is I'll tie into this when I get further into the mode of inheritance. Some patients will present entire deletions without the deletion of that particular gene. Others will present entirely that gene. So that's just an interesting variation within the condition itself. And the deletion occurs within the gametes. So I'm going to save that for once I start talking about the mode of inheritance. So this is a pedigree that I wanted to put in between my molecular cause and mode of inheritance because I think I'll be spending the most time here. So if you review this, you will be able to decipher what's coming. So the mode of inheritance. Williams syndrome is actually really interesting because It's not technically classified as an inherited genetic disorder. It's not, because what happens is a lot of the mutations or deletions occur randomly. So for further detail, although not classified as an inherited disorder, Williams syndrome is a genetic disorder. There have been cases present where patients are the first of their families to have the disorder, like the case of my family and my younger cousin, and are the first to be diagnosed. They're not inherited cases. The deletion of genes on chromosome 7 is randomly occurring, and as I mentioned, occur within the sperm or egg cells, and thus they are not inherited. There have been inherited cases. However, they're a lot less frequent, so they cannot classify this disorder as an inherited genetic disorder. But when inherited, they are classified as an autosomal dominant trait, which means only one copy of chromosome 7 with the deletions would have to be passed on to the offspring. The current ratio of a parent with Williams syndrome passing it on to an offspring is 50%. So fortunately, there are testing options available for Williams syndrome. Actually, I think there's even more advancement now than when my cousin was born, which was she's 18 now, so 2002. She just turned 18. There are definitely more tests available since 18 years ago. So these two categories include cytogenic tests, which are a little bit more at the cellular level, and molecular tests. So the cytogenic tests include fluorescence in situ hybridization. I'm going to call it FISH. So FISH interphase and FISH metaphase, which analyzes the components in different stages of cellular division. So the molecular tests are the detection of homozygosity, wow, the deletion or duplication analysis, targeted variant analysis, methylation analysis, sequence analysis of selected exons, and the sequence analysis of the entire coding region. So as I mentioned in a past presentation that I did, that genetic testing is quite expensive, and Williams syndrome testing is not exempt from that. Fortunately, when presenting symptoms, especially the systemic disorders, these tests are covered by insurance. Can't say all the time, just because I can't, but typically I'm pretty sure you can get these tests covered by insurance. Williams syndrome is something that I would never tell anybody to buy a DTC genetic at-home testing kit for, because the mutations are so random, and really I don't think an at-home kit would do any parent justice when, testing if your child would have this condition. And I also don't think it's appropriate for a parent to try to do this test on their child, because typically these children get diagnosed anywhere from 2 to 4 years old. That would just be strange, swabbing your child's mouth to figure out if they have a condition or not. I would definitely bring them to a physician or neurologist. So the prognosis for these young individuals are kind of difficult to understand, because specific studies which would estimate life expectancy have not been performed because it isn't such a prevalent disorder. Individuals are estimated to live into their 60s. Hypertension is one of those complications that affects 74.5 million Americans with Williams syndrome age 20 or older. Cardiovascular disease affects 81.1 million Americans, and social anxiety disorder affects about 15 million Americans. So when talking about this topic, I want to tie in a few other components as well, such as the development of these young patients. It's also important to look out for, academic inclination or declination. Unfortunately, a lot of these young individuals do struggle in school. I don't want to generalize. They're very socially aware. They're very social beings. But when it comes to academics, there is a struggle, and that's being pulled from the Williams Syndrome Association website. I'm not saying that in a rude way by any means. Additionally, speech is sometimes delayed, and cognitive development is also not on par of that with somebody without Williams syndrome. And these are all based on studies that I've read myself, and again, pulled from the Williams Syndrome Association website. So aside from what I went over, I do want to conclude the extra hurdles that these young children will have to jump over. And I refer to them as young children because, again, most cases are diagnosed anywhere from 2 to 4 years old, and I still look at my cousin as a child. So it's a little bit of a force of habit, but as I mentioned, these people are incredibly social. Some of them speak better than I do. And there really is just such an element of positivity and projection with them. My next slide contains opportunistic research, because with rare disorders, there isn't always such opportunistic research, and it makes my heart happy to hear of all the things being done. Again, this is pulled from the Williams Syndrome Association website. It's amazing how much research is being conducted for a rare disorder. So first and foremost, the disorder is gaining more popularity in research as a result of contributions to the Human Genome Project. I've listed out a few different studies and what they're focusing on. So Caroline Mervis, PhD, University of Louisville, is conducting a study focusing on the cognitive process of patients with Williams syndrome. The Williams Syndrome Research Acceleration Study at Boston Children's Hospital aims to better understand the cardiovascular complications associated with Williams syndrome disorder, which I think will be a major turning point based on their findings for the prognosis projections as well. I think that could be very beneficial. Dr. Barbara Pober from Massachusetts General Hospital is conducting overall health and body composition studies. Her studies were just talking about the overall well-being of Williams syndrome patients and how their metabolism works, how their body weight, and just understanding those technicalities within these patients. And then lastly, not the last study, but the last one that I chose to highlight is Marissa Fisher from the Minnesota State University, and she's conducting studies on the characteristics of internet use of individuals with Williams syndrome. I think internet use in general is just becoming a little too much of a coping resort for parents today, so I'm interested to read more about how the internet use will benefit these children, because I know with a lot of students, because I also have worked very close with autistic children as well, a lot of them will use internet software to communicate, which I think is great, but I feel like internet is such an umbrella term for entertainment, watching TV, that's all entertainment. So I'm interested to see where those correlations and causations come to. So these are just a couple of the sources that I've used. A lot of this information was based on my own experience with Williams syndrome patients, as well as pulled from the past projects that we worked on. I'm very thankful that I got to learn a lot more about this condition. I'm very thankful that I've had the opportunity to have to learn more about the condition. And I think most importantly with the disorder, this rare, I'm very thankful to have been able to share it with all of you guys. I hope you guys learned a thing or two about Williams syndrome, and I appreciate your time in watching. Thank you.